What if I told you Michelle Obama, Tom Hanks, and Emma Watson, they all have imposter syndrome? Trust me, I was so shocked when I first heard this as well because they all look so confident and so put together, which is why in this video, I'm going to share with you how they overcame imposter syndrome, including how you can as well. Because as a former Emmy Award-winning TV journalist who has interviewed hundreds of executives, I've finally figured out how the most successful people think about imposter syndrome and how they never let it affect the way they carry themselves and the way they speak. In my best-selling communications book, Smart Not Loud, How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons, I talk about these key strategies, which I'm going to unveil to you for the very first time in this video. Because here's what I don't want to happen to you. An amazing opportunity comes up. Somebody presents you with an offer that is too good to be true. But guess what? You say no to all of it because you don't feel like you're qualified or you're ready. This video is going to change all of that from here on out. But before we dive into the 5 things, I want to be very direct about something. So this video, it's not a therapy video. I'm not going to tell you to journal your accomplishments or look in the mirror and repeat these positive affirmations. Yes, those things definitely have their place, but that's not what this video is. This video is going to transform how you think, beginning with your behavior. By the way, listen to the 4th point because that one completely changed the way I think about imposter syndrome, where now I never let it affect me when I walk into a new situation anymore. Because here's what I have learned after facilitating hundreds of workshops and working with over 2 million professionals. Most people experience imposter syndrome, including the celebrities we see in the media. They just never let what goes on up here affect how they behave. And guess what? It works because we don't see that imposter syndrome in the way they speak, in the way they carry themselves, and in the way they engage with other people. Because here's the truth. If you let the imposter syndrome linger and affect how you speak, you are boxing yourself into telling the world that you're not ready, you're not qualified, and that you should just stay in your lane. What's the conclusion? That you aren't ready. And by the way, that is one of the worst things that can happen, especially if you care about advancing in your own career. So here's the first thing you need to do to stop letting that imposter syndrome affect you. Cut out the over-preparation spiral. This is what it looks like in real time. You have a presentation coming up in about 3 days. You already know this material because you've actually worked on it and you've been doing it in and out. But here's the thing. You feel like no matter how much you prepare for it, it's not enough. You still feel incredibly anxious and you feel like you need to spend another 40 hours preparing for just that 30-minute presentation. And then when you walk in and you deliver that presentation, maybe that improvement was just 5% better than if you had spent half the time over preparing. That's the over-preparation spiral. And it's what I really call a bad return on investment because that over-preparation that you just did caused you to doubt yourself when in fact you knew the material already. Think about it this way. Over-preparation feels like diligence. And for a lot of smart, hardworking people, this feels like something we just have to do. But what's actually happening underneath it all is that you're telling yourself that you don't trust yourself. You don't believe in your existing expertise, in your knowledge. So you just compensate with volume and time. More research, more slides, more rehearsals as a way of managing your fear that maybe you're going to be exposed of not knowing what you're doing. If this sounds like you, let me tell you right now, I get it. Because when I was working on TV, I felt like I had something to prove. Like I needed to over-prepare above and beyond my colleagues to really show them that I deserved to be here. What did I do? I did things like that. I rewrote it over and over again, and I would ruminate in my own head, and I would think about the worst case scenario if I didn't prepare, and I would honestly create material that didn't even need to be created because no one else saw it. I didn't even use it. It was just a total waste of time. So one day, I remember I was talking to one of my colleagues, someone who was on the exact same level, with the exact same experience, and I was telling him how anxious I often feel whenever I'm at work and when I have to present my ideas. He told me exactly what I told you. Over-preparation is often the mask of imposter syndrome, and it's the fear in us that's talking. So here's the fix. Before any major deliverable, set what I call a preparation ceiling, and you decide in advance, I will only spend X hour on this, and then I'm ready to go. It's good enough. Because ready enough to contribute is not the same as perfect. Perfect is not what we're going for. We're going for impact and visibility because that is what actually gets you noticed for the right reasons. So here's a second thing you need to do to stop letting that imposter syndrome cripple you at work. It's what I call the comparison collapse. This is the moment you walk into a room. It's a meeting, a conference, a networking event, and within the first 30 seconds, your brain has already scanned everyone present in the room and you have told yourself, what the heck am I doing here? Everybody else in this room is way more accomplished than me and I am totally out of my element. Does that sound familiar? But worse yet, because you feel so uncomfortable in this setting, you spend the rest of the time in your own head feeling like you don't belong. And as a result, your behavior is you don't say a thing and you end up talking to someone as if you're uncomfortable. This is what the research calls social comparison, and it was first developed by psychologist Leon Festinger. He found that when we engage in upward comparison, we consistently underestimate our own capabilities relative to other people. And in the professional setting, this isn't neutral. It has consequences. It changes how often you speak, how confident you sound, and how you're perceived by the people around you. You know, I remember one time I was facilitating a communications workshop around elevator pitches, and I was teaching a bunch of attorneys how they can walk into a brand new environment and introduce themselves in a way that was interesting and relatable. This one mid-level associate said she had a really hard time feeling confident in new situations. And I asked her why. And she said exactly what we've been talking about. She feels like everybody was always more accomplished and smarter than her. And she felt like an imposter. Well, I told her that if she didn't change the way she thought about her positioning in that room, in any room, that was going to make people perceive her in that way. Do you see? So I told her the moment before she enters a new meeting, a new networking event, she has to take a breath, walk into the meeting, and tell herself, I'm here to connect with people. Genuine human-to-human connection, not comparing myself, but simply getting to know people and understanding who they are and what they care about. That's it. Oh my God, I can't even explain. A few weeks later, she messages me on LinkedIn and tells me that just this one mindset shift completely eliminated a lot of that fear and anxiety, that negative thinking that she always felt because she did this one thing. She eliminated the comparison collapse. So for you, here's a reframe. The only person worth benchmarking yourself against is you. Are you more skilled than you were 12 months ago? You sure are. Are you doing good work? You sure are. That is enough. By the way, if this video is resonating with you, subscribe to it because I publish videos like this every single week on communication strategies, smart professionals who are ready to be heard. By the way, comment smart below as well because I will personally send you a free workbook around my book, Smart Not Loud, including everything we've covered today plus the frameworks. All right, let's keep going. The next two habits you're going to learn are the ones I almost never see get talked about. So now, here's a third thing you need to do to stop letting the imposter syndrome hold you back. This is, by the way, the most damaging of it all. I call it the negative narrative. It's basically the feeling like you are just not good enough. And here's what it sounds like in your own head. You land a big project. You think it's just pure luck. You miss a deadline and you think you are the biggest failure in the world. Words and phrases in your mind might sound like, I knew I wasn't ready. I should have prepared more. I am totally not cut out for this. But do you see what's happening here? Success gets credited to external factors like it was luck, it was timing, it was other people. And failure gets internalized as personal evidence of inadequacy. Psychologists call this asymmetric attribution, and it is the engine that keeps imposter syndrome running in your head, no matter how much evidence of competence accumulates around you. Because when success never counts as proof of your capability, no amount of achievement actually changes how you see yourself. Research on attribution theory, originally developed by Bernard Weiner at UCLA, shows that asymmetric pattern is one of the most powerful mechanisms for maintaining a negative self-concept over time. Your brain has essentially built in this filter, positive out, negative in. You know, this one hit me really hard because I grew up in an environment where my parents were quite strict on me. They expected perfection, partly because they sacrificed a lot for their kids, me and my brother, and they expected us to do well, perform well, excel, go above and beyond. And as a result, I set this unattainable bar where just having 100%, well, that wasn't enough. It had to be 110, 120%. And I would benchmark this against, if I didn't hit it, it meant that I was a failure. Or when something good happened, I just had to move on quickly to the next accomplishment. I couldn't just celebrate the achievement that I just got. I remember I was talking to one of my good friends about this feeling of like you're just never good enough, or that everything is just pure luck, anything good that happened. Well, as every good friend would do, she pointed out, without you, that win wouldn't have happened. Without you, progress wouldn't have been made. You know, without you, you wouldn't be in this amazing place that you are in right now. That's a lot to be grateful for. I love this because just hearing that took so much pressure away from needing to keep achieving and prevented me from enjoying myself, where now I could go, wait a second, I am enough. For you, I want you to remember that you're doing great work. And if something doesn't work out, something you messed up on, it is no way a reflection on who you are as a person. You are allowed to own your wins. Not because it makes you arrogant, but because you never keep score of your own competence. You will always feel like a beginner, regardless of what you've actually built. Always remember that wins are wins. Now here's a fourth thing you need to do to stop letting the imposter syndrome from hurting you. I call it the shrinking ask, and here's what it looks like. An opportunity comes up. It's a salary negotiation, a project proposal, a chance to define your own scope in this new role you're in. And somewhere between the moment you first decide what you want and the moment you actually open your mouth, the number that you are asking for, that promotion, that raise, that salary, it gets smaller and smaller. The scope of it narrows and the ask is just now safe. Not because the opportunity changed, not because anyone told you to scale it back, but because some part in your brain said, don't push your luck, don't ask for too much, don't appear greedy. What if they say no? Do you see what I mean here? Research from Carnegie Mellon on negotiation and self-advocacy found that professionals experiencing these high levels of imposter syndrome consistently underasked, not just in salary negotiations, but even in a scope setting, asking for resources or defining a role. The gap is significant. On average, 18 to 23% below of what they actually earned. By the way, if you're a woman, this is especially the case where we often undermine and undervalue our own ability and our own contribution. Because think about what this all means, compounded across a career. Your role, your pay, you're negotiating less and less than your worth. And that difference adds up. Nobody's going to give it to you. You have to ask for it. And this reminds me of a chapter in my book, Smart Not Loud, chapter 5, which is called Advocating for Yourself, where I talk about how every successful person not only knows how to advocate for themselves, but they ask for what they want and they follow up with confidence. It is exactly the same concept here. In fact, I remember one time early on in my career when I was working on TV, I negotiated a raise of about 3%. And I was feeling so good about it. I did ask for what I want and I got it. But guess what happened? I also found out that what I was making was much less than one of my other colleagues who was in the exact same role with the exact same level and experience doing basically the exact same thing as me. Initially, it was a huge gut punch in my stomach because right then and there, what I realized was I did not negotiate hard enough. I was diminishing my own value by offering a smaller, safer number. So the lessons that I took from that was reach higher than you think you need to, because it not only gives you a larger playing field and more leverage, but it also signals to the other person that you know this is why you're so valuable. And this number is my value. By the way, here's a real tangible communication tip and how you can put this into practice yourself. Before any ask, any negotiation, any proposal that you want to make, anytime you're like setting the term of your own contribution, write down what you're asking for. Write down that number on your piece of paper. Not the safe number, it's the number that they'll probably say yes to. That's the thing. You think of what that number is and you reach a little bit higher. But then you sit with that number for 24 hours without changing it. Then that's the number you use for your ask. Look, you can always negotiate down, but you can never negotiate up from a number you've already given. So start with where you want to be. And here's a fifth thing you need to do to stop letting the imposter syndrome hold you back. It's what I call the reassurance loop. And this is what it sounds like. Hey, does that look okay to you? Am I on the right track with this? I wanted to check. Do you think I'm handling this all correctly? Does that make sense to you? These questions, checking in with your manager, getting feedback from a colleague, you asking a set of questions to get more eyes on what you're doing. Yes, these are all healthy instincts when they are occasional and purposeful. But those questions are what I call the reassurance loop. And it happens when those check-ins is you seeking validation. It feels overbearing and it's not necessarily constructive. It's just you needing approval. And by the way, when you're seeking that validation, not to improve the work, but to soothe that fear inside, that isn't enough. It comes from that imposter syndrome inside of you. But here's a paradox. Research on leadership perception shows that professionals who seek frequent reassurance are rated significantly lower on leadership readiness, even when the quality of their work is high. Because to the person on the other end of that question, repeated check-ins, they don't read as due diligence. They read as someone who has a lot of self-doubt. And self-doubt is not a quality people associate with someone they're ready to promote. I remember I was having a conversation with another executive recently, and she was telling me that she was in the midst of performance review with her team, where she now was deciding between two candidates of who should get this next level promotion. So when I was catching up with her, we talked about person A and we talked about person B, and they were basically nearly identical in their experience, in their years of work, and even their deliverables. But then the executive said that they were giving the promotion to person B. I asked why. What made them choose that person? And she said, person A was incredibly smart, and they were always putting and turning things in on time. But they always needed reassurance that they were doing the right thing. And that lack of self-confidence made her hesitate on whether or not that person had the leadership conviction for that higher level position. Wow, listen to that. Too much reassurance needed, especially if it was coming from a place of validation, not constructive feedback, it can actually diminish your presence. By the way, that is imposter syndrome talking. Needing to constantly be validated when in fact you already know your stuff. So here's a reframe. Replace reassurance with progress updates. So instead of, is this okay? Try saying, I want to share where I'm landing on this and get your perspective on this one point. Hear the difference. You are still checking in. You are still being collaborative, but you're leading the conversation with a position of ownership, not asking your manager to make you feel better. This is what leadership sounds like from the outside. All right, let's bring this all together. The 5 imposter syndrome habits that are quietly keeping smart professionals stuck and what you can do about it. Number 1, the over-preparation spiral. And here's what to do instead. Set a preparation ceiling. Decide when you're ready enough and just go. Imperfect action beats paralyzed preparation every single time. 2, the comparison collapse. Stop benchmarking yourself against the most accomplished person in the room. 3, the negative narrative. It's true that luck plays a big factor with success and opportunity, but if you get a big win, you are allowed to celebrate and not think that you just got lucky. 4, the shrinking ask. When you negotiate, make that ask and make it big. You cannot negotiate up from a number you've already given. 5, the reassurance loop. Replace, is this okay, with, here's where I'm landing. Lead from a place of ownership. That's what leadership looks like from the outside. Now, here's what I want you to hold on to. Imposter syndrome is not evidence that you don't belong. It is far more often evidence that you really do care deeply and that you do hold yourself to a high standard and that you are reaching for something beyond what you are perhaps comfortable with. But imposter syndrome, it's not weakness. Once you know how to reframe your mindset, ask the right questions, you are now going to change your behavior so that people start to see you and recognize you in a way that you want to be perceived. Because here's the truth. You have what it takes. The work that you're doing is amazing and you want people around you to see it. I would love to hear from you. Of the 5 things that I shared today in this video, which one resonated with you the most? Comment the number below. You can tell me the number 1 through 5, or you can tell me specifically which part of it resonated. And by the way, if you want the full frameworks of some of the things that I talked about today, comment the word SMART below because I have this amazing communications PDF guide that I will DM you and send you immediately. Just comment SMART below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. I add a brand new video on communications every single week for people who are ready to level up the way they're seen and their communication skills. So don't forget to hit subscribe. I'm Jessica Chen, and I'll see you in our next video.